Hi GOH, this is Unit 4, Lesson 3, and today we're going to construct perpendicular lines. So this first construction that we're going to do is a perpendicular bisector. It's actually my favorite one because it's one of the easier ones and everybody usually gets it right. So we're going to do all sorts of perpendicular lines today. So perpendicular lines play many critical roles in geometry. The construction of right angles and thus perpendicular lines has already been introduced in Unit 2. And the key to understanding all the constructions that we do is the following fact. So right here, perpendicular bisectors and equal distances. A point lies on the perpendicular bisector of a line segment if it is equidistant from the endpoints of the segment. So if AC is equal to BC, and then look at the picture right here, it already has it marked. If AC is equal to BC, then C must lie on the perpendicular bisector of AB, and that's that dotted line, line P. Line P is the perpendicular bisector of AB. AM is congruent to BM. So it's perpendicular and it bisects. So in this exercise number 1, we're going to review how to construct the perpendicular bisector of a segment given AB shown below. So the directions are there, but here's what you need to do. You take your compass, you put it on one of the endpoints. I'm going to put it on A. The only thing that you have to do is open it more than halfway. So I'm just going to judge where halfway is and make sure I go more than halfway. I need arcs above and below. If you just want to, oops, I definitely don't want that. If you just want to drag your pen or pencil the whole time, then you can certainly do that. Let me just try and make this line a little bit thinner here. I don't know why it came out so thick. Let's try that again. There we go. So I usually just drag my compass the whole way. I don't worry about just making the arcs above and below. If you wanted to do an entire circle, you can do an entire circle. Then I put my compass on point B with the same setting. Don't change it, the same exact setting, and I'm going to do arcs above and below. Again, I'm just going to drag my compass the whole way. Now where those two arcs meet on the top, we're going to call that C. And where those two arcs meet on the bottom, I'm going to call that D. All right, I'm only labeling it because we're going to talk about these points down below, but otherwise they don't necessarily have to be labeled. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a straight edge and I'm going to draw a line through C and D. And I missed it a little bit, so let me just move this line over. So that line right there, CD, is perpendicular. You can see it looks like it's forming a right angle with AB, and it's also bisecting AB. I'm not bisecting CD, I'm bisecting AB. Okay? Why must points C and D both lie on the perpendicular bisector of AB? Draw CD and verify that it is both perpendicular and it bisects. So when I did this construction, okay, C and D are equidistant from the endpoints of A and B, so they must lie on the perpendicular bisector. If I was to draw, not that I have to, and you don't need to do this, but if I was to draw a line connecting A to C and C to B, those lines would be congruent to each other. And the reason they're congruent is because I used a radius, the same exact radius, when I drew A to C and when I drew B to C. Okay, and the same thing would be true for point D down below. So that was question C. All right, so by construction, both C and D are equidistant from the endpoints of AB, so they must lie on the perpendicular bisector of AB. All right. Now, the next construction is actually the same. The next construction, given the line segment EF, construct its midpoint. So when I did this construction back up here, this point right there, I'm going to put a dot on it. I'll make a purple dot. So this point right here is actually the midpoint. A bisector intersects at the midpoint. So when you construct a perpendicular bisector, you also find the midpoint at the same time. So in the next construction here, exercise 2, they want me to find the midpoint and call it and label it M. So I'm going to do the same construction. I'm just going to take my compass, open it more than halfway, draw an arc. So the construction of the perpendicular bisector also is the same construction for a midpoint. I opened my compass more than halfway, I drew an arc. Now I moved over to point F and I draw an arc with the same radius. And where those arcs intersect, I now take my straight edge and I draw a line through those points. There we go. So they want me to label that midpoint with an M. So this point right here, I'll put a dot right there. So that point right there is the midpoint, and I will call that M. So perpendicular bisector, if you just want perpendicular or you just want bisector, you're going to do the same exact construction. The perpendicular bisector sort of comes, both will happen at the same time. They come together. Sometimes I just want a perpendicular line. So if we're looking at this next page, we want to be able to construct a perpendicular line through a point on a line. Okay, and then I'm also going to construct a perpendicular line from a point not on a line. So exercise 3, I'm going to construct a perpendicular line not at its midpoint, so it's not a bisector, it's just a perpendicular line. So here's what we do. We put our compass on point A. So point A is on line M, and I want to draw a perpendicular line that goes through A. So oops, again, I don't know why I got such a thick line right there. So let's try and fix this. All right, so I'm going to put my compass on A, and I'm going to draw an arc on the left and the right. Now, I just dragged it the whole way, but I technically just need an arc on the right side and an arc on the left side. So it has to intersect line M on the left and the right. If it was too big and it went past the line, then remember a line is just a line and you can extend that line. Then what I do is I take my compass and I put it on where the first arc intersects on the right. They said to call this C and D. You don't necessarily need to. I need to open it up more than halfway, okay, and draw an arc. Keep the same setting, and now I move it over to where that intersects, where the first arc intersects on the left. With the same setting, I draw an arc. And where those two arcs meet, that's going to get connected with point A. And then I'll use my straight edge and I will connect those. And that line is perpendicular. Okay, so let's see what they wanted us to explain along the way. I just showed you how to do it. Explain why A must be the midpoint of segment BC. So they said that we should label these B right here and C. A is the midpoint of BC because the distance from A to B and A to C was that same exact radius. Okay, A is the center of a circle whose diameter is BC. AC and BA are both radii of that circle. Now, I didn't draw a whole circle. I just drew part of a circle. And they have to be congruent, so A has to be the midpoint of BC. I then constructed the perpendicular bisector of BC as we did on the front side. You don't have to think of it as a perpendicular bisector if you don't want to, but technically it is. All right, I first make sure that I draw an arc so that I have B and C and A is in the middle, and then from B and C I open up my compass more than halfway and I just draw arcs below. I don't need them. I could draw them above or I can draw them below. I don't need to have them above and below like on the first page because I already have another point that I can connect it with. So you don't have to draw arcs above and below. You can, but you don't need to. All right, and then this next one, let me just move this compass out of the way for us. Same thing, I want to construct a line that's perpendicular, but this time my point is not on the line. So here's what you need to do. You need to draw an arc. Put your compass on point A. You need to draw an arc that goes below the line so that it's intersecting that line on the left and the right. All right, again, it needs to go below the line because I need 2 points of intersection. A lot of these constructions are the same in that you do your first initial arc, and then from that first initial arc, you draw 2 more arcs from the points of intersection. So now I'm going to put my compass on the point, and again, they did want us, if you're following along with the directions that I have written, they wanted us to call these points of intersection points B and C. So I will do that so you can follow along also. And I'll move them up to where I want them. So where the arc intersects line N, I call those points of intersection B and C. So now I put my compass on point B, and I'm going to draw an arc down here. And then I've moved my compass over to point C, And the same setting that I just did, and I'm going to draw an arc, and where those two arcs meet, I'm going to connect it with point A. Again, I don't have to draw arcs above and below because I have a second point. The first construction we did, that perpendicular bisector, I needed to do that because I did not have, I did not have 2 points. Sorry, I wanted to draw a line there. Let me get my line right there. Perfect, and I connect those. And that line is perpendicular. All right. A must be, I'm looking at the questions right now, A must lie on the perpendicular bisector of BC because the distance from A to B and the distance from A to C are both the same. By construction, point B and C are equidistant from A. So A is equidistant from B and C and therefore is on the perpendicular bisector. And then the construction of the perpendicular bisector of BC, I just have to open my compass more than halfway, and I draw my 2 arcs. I can have them above, but I don't need to because I already have point A. All right, so we will practice all of these perpendicular lines tomorrow as well.